Stuchu, the esports journalist, made a tweet in which he said, a lot of big esports tournaments next week. E-League, Dota 2 Major, Capcom Cup Finals, Apex Finals. Now, when I saw this tweet, I mean, he's referring there to E-League, which is a big CSGO tournament, one of the biggest. The Dota 2 Major, so obviously one of the 3 biggest tournaments of the year. The Capcom Cup Finals is, I assume, Street Fighter. And the Apex Final is the Overwatch Final for OGN in Korea. When I saw this, and this is a good list of some big tournaments coming up in 4 different esports games, the first thing I thought was like, yep, he's right, like, that's going to be cool. But then I also was immediately hit with this pang of like, it's actually amazing though, how many people who see his tweet are only going to recognize one of those names as something cool coming up. So the idea that all these people who follow him and who follow esports in general and like things about esports that they don't necessarily understand have a universality across many games and actually aren't just about what you like about the details or the like idiosyncrasies or the specific aspects of that game, but actually cross over to other games and make players really cool in those other games. It means that because they can't see that universality, they won't look at other games, they just watch their game or their game and a new game they've moved to. And as a result, they're not enjoying or getting the benefit of some fantastic esports across many different games. So, I mean, I personally, of those 4, will not watch the Street Fighter one, the Capcom one, because, I mean, it's just not a sport I follow, and I follow so many esports, I don't have time for another one because I'm enjoying the others so much. But that's actually kind of the point of what I'm going to make here, which is because I will watch the other 3. Now, obviously, people can watch whatever they want, and there's no reason to get involved with games that you aren't interested in, and if you watch them and they're not for you, that's fine. That's not the angle that I'm trying to push here. I'm not telling everyone they should, or that it's better if everyone gets involved in it. I mean, myself, I used to literally only watch Quake and Counter-Strike for, like a decade, until I got into Brood War as well. Now, that's actually also, though, because I was in a different position to a lot of the people who I'm referring to in this video and who I think would benefit from watching other esports, which is those games for their genre were some of the hardest, some of the best, some of the most in-depth, and had some of the best circuits with many, many tournaments and tons of matches to watch, that I never was bored when watching those games. I could watch every big game, and I could watch all the smaller games, and I could watch them over and over again, and I never had any issues in that sense. But a key point that I want to make in this video is, by watching the best or who become your favorite players and teams across multiple esports titles, you can enjoy high quality, really entertaining, really thrilling, really deep games without having to water down your esports watching viewing experience, without having to have your enjoyment kind of decreased a little bit by having to watch a game that's not quite as good because there's nothing else on in your game at the time. And so I actually think the reason this is a key issue is not just people missing some of the greatness of esports. So for example, someone in CSGO doesn't know how insanely good Miracle is from OG in Dota 2, and someone in Dota 2 doesn't really understand necessarily how good Faker is in League of Legends. The point I'm trying to make here is that I think some of the people who express frustration with their game, or say like the game's not as good anymore, or they complain that there aren't enough upsets and someone's dominating the game and the meta's stale, sure, these are complaints which can be tailored and can specifically be focused and targeted on the key aspects of that game. But I think some of the sentiment behind it, from what I've observed, it's just people who themselves are bored with the game. It's not the game itself that has not as much of a problem as it's their response to it, and their enjoyment is now diminished. So since they are bored with the game, I feel as though these are the people that, you know, they've gone as deep as they can in that game, or they just don't enjoy something about the style and the current meta of the game. And these are the sort of people who absolutely, they should be ripe to go and check out some other esports games and in time learn that some of those are fantastic and that there are aspects to that game that they enjoy more, or a circuit they enjoy more, or types of players they enjoy more, and get to enjoy all the best esports that they particularly would be into. So, as a result, if you are someone who watches League of Legends, okay, so you watch the big game in LCS each week, and then maybe you watch the big events, MSI, World, sure, they're all thrilling, but then you watch the smaller events, the IEMs, and some of them, like, for example, the ones now, aren't quite as cool because it's the off-season, so there's this vibe that it doesn't matter, and then there's not all the best teams there, and then the opening matches are always bomb matches of, like, some wild card against a good team that you don't care about, and then you're waiting for the good match to happen, then you're hoping you can see an Asian team against a good team and some international competition, so it's already diluted down, and there's already only so many games you can really enjoy at a high level to really enjoy them. So here's the thing, if you're someone who watches CSGO, sure, you get tons of lands, you have an awesome circuit, there's always going to be some that have lesser teams. There's always going to be some that the team you like doesn't qualify for. There's always going to be some where the teams you like get knocked out, and it's teams with a style that you don't particularly enjoy going further, and you think, this is boring. What's with the mayor in CSGO right now? So here's the thing. Try other esports titles, but pick out, based on the factors you think you might enjoy, which one it would be. So I'll go through some of them for you. So CSGO. The best qualities of CSGO would be it has a very high skill cap relative to an FPS. It has quite a simple learning curve early on. You'll very quickly pick up the basics to initially have a sense of at least who's really good, who's really bad, and some of the aspects of why they won. But then it's a very deep game tactically. And so tactically in terms of understanding the strategies and then what people are doing in response and the calls people are making, and how people are used within the system of their team, or how they're making plays outside of the system and they're even better individual plays. All these aspects are there. It's a game that has a lot of history and a lot of rivalries as a result. Like all the best teams have storied pasts where they've been up and down and they've added the players and they've had battles with people over the years. It has one of the best circuits with tons of events and different tiers of events and different levels of competition that can still be very good as long as they're evenly matched up. And Counter-Strike in general is a very good game when the teams are matched up. If you want to watch Dota 2, this is a game that has pretty good skill level, pretty good variety of skills that are necessary as well. Team play is a key to this game. Tactics in terms of understanding comps and decisive shot calling are really important. Compositions, that is, the different heroes that you use. It also has a fantastic circuit, tons of events around the world of different teams battling again and again and getting lots of repeat victories and matches against each other. It also has very good analysts in that game who will help break down some of the more important aspects. You don't have to be an expert. They'll help you understand some of the aspects of what makes this team good and why this hero will be good for that team. StarCraft 2 obviously as a game has died off a lot, but it's still a game. I mean, sure, it has its issues in terms of the talent in the game because of the ecosystem that's in, but it still has it's a pretty good meta at the moment, and actually the matches still in general are pretty good. There's a lot of them, so I had to pick out like your best players and the big tournaments to watch. And like, for example, obviously you go and watch SSL and GSL. These are obviously the highest leagues to watch. But you'll still get very exciting matches, and in theory, it's also one of the easier games to understand the very basics of, but it's obviously very deep. League of Legends, I say the best quality about League of Legends is that it's a truly global game. Pretty much every country that wants to be good in esports competes in League of Legends and has millions of people competing in it, and as a result, there are more people trying to be good at League of Legends than any other esports game that we're aware of. So that's really great. As a result, you're going to get a lot of talent comes through. Sure, the game's more limited than some of the games I've listed already, but you still do see sick individual carry games every now and then. That has diminished a bit more. And if you enjoy the team macro aspect of vision control and how you fight as a team and understanding team fights, the Korean teams particularly will be fantastic. And those can be really impressive games to watch as they come back in the games, or as it's a close game going towards 35 minutes and then someone takes over using purely macro shot calling. This can be really impressive shit. In terms of Overwatch, I would say the skills pretty good because there are so many different types of skills within the game. There's a lot of novelty and innovation and creativity because it's so early in the game's development, and there are so many variations available in terms of compositions because you can have the same character on both teams and you can switch characters as well. So this makes it very interesting. There's a lot of action going on. It'll be quite hard to understand initially, but it means there's constant action. You're never in some lull like you get in League of Legends. There's not much going on. The commentators just have to make up something like contextual or tactical to talk about. In terms of the approach to being able to enjoy these other esports games, here would be the approach I suggest because it's how I myself have gotten into many of these games. So first and foremost, when you come into a game, figure out, just by reading online, looking at a Wikipedia or watching the last big tournament, figure out roughly who the best player or the best team is. Once you know that, watch a bunch of games of that team in big matches. So we're talking about finals and semi-finals of events. Watch that team. As you start to watch them, if you like that team or player, then start to watch more of their games. Watch them in the quarterfinals, watch them in past tournaments. And now, because you like them and you're enjoying watching them, you'll start to gauge by watching them in lesser matches as well, like what they're like against all types of opponents. You'll start to gauge their strength. What is their form like? What are the core qualities? What are their weaknesses? As you do this, you will learn more about them and then the opponents that they played in the game. Now, if you don't like them, then when you first watch the best team, you'll see them in semis and finals playing their rivals or their peers. Now, pick one of those that you enjoy and do the same process. Go back and watch past matches, watch the other matches in the tournament, watch lesser matches. Now, once you have that team or player that you're interested in, go through history and watch the biggest matchups they played in. Then watch the best matchups of against the same rival over and over again. As you keep doing this, you will naturally, as you're trying to follow one team, be expanding out your interest into other teams that you find that are cool, and then you'll find that that fills in pieces of the jigsaw as to why that team wins, why they got ahead, and then you'll be able to jump to one of those teams and watch them play. And then the next tournament that comes, now you'll have a whole bunch of potential matchups that'll interest you in the bracket once it gets there. And you still don't have to watch every match or know everything. You can just wait till the semis, you can wait till the final, you can wait till the right match, and then get involved. And as a result, you're only watching what for you is still high quality entertainment, without having some of the less lower level competition and quality that maybe you tried to get away from in the other game by coming to this game. So I also think another key quantity is, as you start to watch that team play many opponents, you will in time well, at least I start to respect and admire players and teams that initially maybe I didn't vibe with. I didn't like their style, I thought it wasn't as good, but when I see what it takes those players to beat the team that I like, or to exploit the weaknesses, or how they match up, I start to respect them more. And now I start to sometimes want to see them do well, or want to see that style work in its own way. And I get a deeper enjoyment than I would have had just on the most basic level of what I initially very simply enjoy at first glance. Now, I'll give you some examples of players and teams that you can watch in these games if you want like a quick entry point based on my description. So for CSGO, I would say, like, let's start off with what a lot of people like. So aggressive, flashy teams. Okay, I've got two for you right now. G2, the French team. This is a team which lives and dies on individual skill. And on the T side, it's by hitting and at the right time, overwhelming the site, rushing in there, getting headshots, using the raw skill of their star players. So we're talking about Shox, one of the best players of all time, still a very good player now. Talking about Scream, some of the best aim in the world. These guys try to tear up the sites, and that's how they try to win on T side. CT side, they play fairly simple, just team play off each other because they all know each other on like an emotional, intuitive level, and then they just try and win on their skill there as well. So they're a very up and down team, but when they're on their game, they're very exciting to watch. And because they're not a team that relies on strategy so much, they're not going to be like a grinding, slow consistency team. You'll see these big swings, so it'll be very exciting to watch in that sense in terms of their form. Virtus Pro, probably the best team in the world right now. They're a team with amazing T-sides. They've always got innovative approaches. They've stayed with the same roster for over 3 years now. Their star player is Snacks, one of the best all-round players we've ever seen. Fantastic at moving through smokes. Great with all the different weapons. They've got Neo, formerly the best Counter-Strike 1.6 player. In CSGO, he's more just like a role player who's well-rounded and does a bit of everything and is a good clutch player. If you want the stable style of team, a team that plays consistently and they do the same things again and again, they have a system that they play from and they're good on both sides of the game, let's go with two, Dignitas and Sk Gaming. So the Danish team Dignitas, they've got some of the best skill in the world, but it's good balance. It's not all in one player. They've got a great tactical approach, so they're good on the T side. They're a team that has a good in-game leader, so they can mix things up on CT side. They have a really deep map pool. Sk Gaming, formerly the best team in the world. They won the 2 majors for this year. Now they've dropped off a bit, but they're always making semis, always making finals, because they've got a good system in place. They've got consistency. They actually have a solid enough map pool. It's shaky in some areas, but they're gods on train right now. They're 26-2 in that offline. Unreal numbers. And they have one of the best players in the world still in Cold Zero, so they're making it deep in tournaments. If you want a team that has upset potential, go with NIP. This was the original dynasty. 4 of the 5 players here were in the NIP that ruled the first part of the game, won their first 87 matches. In latter years, they haven't won many titles, but they do rise up occasionally to win the odd title, and when they do it in miraculous form, because they don't have the pieces of the style to be the best team consistently, but when they hit their form, there's a reason it's called Nip Magic, because they win in incredible fashion with comebacks and amazing performances by one player just overperforming for a half, and it's so magical to watch. It'll really compel you and draw you into the game. In terms of some players to watch, I mean, Simple might be the most skilled player in the world right now, but he's a young guy and he's got potentially attitude problems, or rather I'd say it's more like he's still having to learn a lot of the team play concepts, but his skill level's through the roof. Shox is like an old veteran who still manages to be one of the best in the world right now. Cold Zero is probably the most effective player in the world, the most efficient player, because you put him into the SK system, now he's a beast and he's absolutely taken over games. Magic's boy is the star of Dignitas, who rose up recently, and this is a guy where just from the summer onwards he's become one of the best in the world, but with this really great passive style and a really nice skill level as well. So let's talk about Dota 2. In Dota 2, I'm going to have to go mainly off teams earlier in the year because there have been a lot of roster shuffles after the international, and we still don't really know where the lay of the land is. So earlier in the year, one of the teams I enjoyed watching was Newbie, because I always enjoy the elite Chinese squads, and this is a squad that weren't afraid to play aggressive at times. They had Hao as their carry, who's one of the all-time great carries in Dota. Just a fantastic player to watch get fed in a game, and he's a guy where he's not just going to let you choke his team out. He's going to go ham. He's going to make plays to get back in the game, and he is that like traditional traditional classic Chinese carry, but who survived to the modern day, whereas people like Burning haven't really. Then you've got to go with Team Liquid. This is a Western squad, mainly European, but who possess intellect. And the core person that comes from is Kuroki, their captain, former Na'Vi player, former Secret player, a guy where you can see he has good intelligent decision-making in the game, and this is a team that can do comebacks, can always mix it up against the opponents they're against. One of the best teams of the year, who sadly underperformed at TI, I mean, actually all these teams I've named so far did, is OG, who won 2 of the majors. And they were a team, sure, as a team they were good and they had good parts, but they were based around the power of Miracle in that meta at that time. A guy who was an amazing, I mean, I say carry in the sense of a carry, but he's like actually a mid player. Just an unbelievable talent, really, really strong player, and can do so much. Then you go, obviously a classic one is Evil Geniuses, because yes, they have the tactical foundation of PPD, so they're always going to have interesting approaches to the game and draft quite well. But then in this lineup, they had some superstar talents. They had Arteezy for many periods of time, dubbed best Western player or potentially best player in the world, but who never quite lived up to it as much at the internationals, even though he's always played very well. But talent level, absolutely fantastic. His skills are amazing. Then you have Sumail, who they had in there, who was a young guy they only found in 2015, who came out of nowhere, and at the time the meta suited him very much. He was just blowing people away. Admittedly, you have to give him a lot of space and kind of set him up sometimes, but he's a guy where he can even feed and then come back in the game and dominate. So a really exciting player who's going to make aggressive playmaking stuff, and obviously you put him on the right hero and he's going to be a beast. In StarCraft 2, I'll admit, StarCraft 2 is one that I have watched a lot less in the last few years because I saw the scene starting to die off, and that really sapped some of my interest. But I'll give you a few names to go with. So Zest is a classic because for the last 2.5 years he's been one of the best players in the world. He's a guy where, yeah, he has that macro skill, but he also has the ability to abuse what Protoss is good at, those early all-ins, those timing attacks. He can do all that shit. He's just one of the most skilled, one of the best Protoss we've ever seen. If you want a foreigner, Neeb is the obvious one to go with, because this is a guy where he's clearly got potential. He won a Korean tournament in Korea. He's a guy where his talent was clearly visible before, but it looked like he just didn't perform offline. Now he's starting to get his shit together in that sense, so now he's starting to get pretty exciting. And sure, he's not going to win big tournaments often, but at least in terms of individual match play, it seems that whenever he's in a big series against a top opponent, he always pulls out some games which are really fun to watch, whether he wins or loses them. And so it's a very exciting player in that sense. And another Korean I'd go with is Dark, because, I mean, this guy, okay, he used to be a macro Zerg, but then he started switching up with fast attacks. Now he started to do that aggressive play. And the thing about him is there's an intelligence behind how he does it. There's a control discipline behind how he does it that makes it really fun to watch, because you don't think he's just playing macro because he's scared, or he's just doing an all-in attack to be cheesy. You feel like there's a logic and an intellect behind that probing for the opponent, and he's also a sick player in ZVP. Now in League of Legends, again, I'm going to have to go with old teams because we're in the off-season now. So SK Telecom won Worlds. I mean, they have the best player of all time. This is literally the Michael Jordan of League of Legends right now, which is Faker, who's won 3 World Championships, a whole bunch of domestic championships, one of the best players you'll ever see. And in general, the teams they put around him, thanks to the coaching and the role players, it always has championship quality. That's the thing. They might not always win in LCK, but they have the championship quality seal around them, and they're always based around Faker. Rox Tigers was probably the best team of the year, even though they didn't win Worlds, and they were based around the Smeb, who I think was the best player of the year, fantastic top laner who can do it all. They have Gorilla, one of the best support players. This is just a really good team, and when they finally got Peanut, they had very few weaknesses, and they were just a team that, sure, they might not have always won. They might have had some choke factor to them at the top level in finals, but they're still just an amazing team to watch day to day, and the level of League of Legends they could play was utterly bananas. I mean, close to perfect in macro, I think, towards the end of the middle to the late part of the year, when they got into the late game against people. Just incredible ability in the game. In terms of Western teams, H2K was one which all year long with this lineup, which is now split up, they had fantastic individual players, and they could get so much done in the first 20 minutes they could win the game. But if they got to 35 minutes or past in the late game, now they would always have these questionable decisions. So it was always exciting to watch them play because you didn't know if they were going to fuck it up or just beat someone with the talent that they had. TSM was one of the strongest Western teams because they had some of the strongest players, some of the strongest laners, a good role balance between them. But they also had their own weird late game macro, and bizarrely they underperformed that Worlds, but they had a great season overall in the split, and they have the core of that team going forwards. G2, the best European team, have masses of talent. Some of the most talented players in the West, I think some of those talented in the world. But they don't always live up to it internationally, so there's still a big X factor. People are waiting to see if they can ever get their shit together as a team at the moment. So very interesting storyline there. RNG, the Chinese team, is one that has tons of Chinese talent, but because they don't really have the most intelligent decision making in the game, they're very up and down. But that makes them really interesting because they're a massive upset chance against anyone, really. In Overwatch, admittedly, this is the game I've watched the least of all these ones on the list. I watched some of it. So I would just put it like this. In terms of storylines, I would go this way. Do you want to watch Koreans? Because we know Koreans get to be the best in most games they're serious about, and they seem to be serious about Overwatch. Well, they haven't quite cemented their grasp on Overwatch yet. They won the World Cup, but that was just a mixed tournament. In general, they haven't won the big tournaments yet in the actual team-based aspect of the game, but they're getting there. So if you're interested in Koreans, the classic team that I still think on paper is probably still the best is Lunatic High, but they have some issues with their roster where some of their fantastic players are mixed in with players that maybe aren't that good or aren't suited to that team. Then you go to Kongdu Uncia, who shocked everyone. We all thought it was the Panthera Kongdu that was supposed to be the better one. These guys have shocked us all, and they got to the semi-finals this time, so they're certainly someone to watch out for, because you didn't see those players in the Korean team in the Overwatch World Cup. Afrika Blue were thought to be kind of like, they didn't make it and they're not that good, but they've made it to the final from the other side of the bracket. If you want some Westerners, for a start, if you want an exciting team, I'd say NIP. These seem to be the guys who set the meta. They're always ahead of things. This Finnish lineup, they seem to be very good online and in scrims. They haven't quite shown it as much offline, so I still feel like they might break through soon and become that like best Western team, or they have a chance to. And they're really an interesting teams in terms of the things they're doing, because things they are doing are things other people are going to either react to with counters or copy themselves when it becomes part of the meta. Envious was a team that were the original dominant team, but online, and then didn't get it done offline, kept getting upset. I mean, get it done in the sense of be the best. But now they've made this player change where Tailspin's gone and in comes Mickey. Suddenly they're winning all these amazing series. Sure, close fashion, but they've gone to the final of OGN in Apex, and they might win that yet. Misfits was a team that came out of nowhere with subs to win the Overwatch Open, the E-League tournament. But because they had subs and because it was out of nowhere kind of, I mean, they were a good European team, but they weren't thought of as the best. People thought, will they live up to that? Then they made this crazy roster move, brought in Kulo, one of the best Quake players of all time, to be the shot caller as well, play Lucio, and they've just won DreamHack Winter ahead of Fnatic, ahead of NIP. So very interesting team to follow what's going to happen there. Rogue was a team which were probably, just in terms of results, the best team in the world up until the quarterfinals of Apex, and now it seems as though the patch has hit them a bit, and some of their supports have had their issues, and now people are criticizing them quite a lot. So you want to see what's going forwards. Like, can they adapt? Will the methods shift back in their favor? Will they change a player? Because there's a team that had the potential to be the world #1s if they weren't already. So you can see the storyline. There's players, there's teams out there for all these games. You just pick one, start with it, and even if you don't like them, the players they're playing against, the teams they're playing against, eventually there's going to be one that's going to vibe with you, and you're going to be able to watch that even on the most low level. So the key point I'm trying to make here is you don't even need to understand the game to start to enjoy it, as long as you start at the right level, like the highest level matches with the top teams that all have very distinct styles. So for someone like CSGO, you can get in from pretty much day one there. It's so simple as an initial game that you can start to enjoy it. StarCraft 2, okay, relatively simple entry point, a little bit harder. You have to know some of the players a bit more. Dota 2, League of Legends, and Overwatch are going to be pretty tough, I will say, but there's still an aesthetic quality you can enjoy initially. You can get excitement from the casters. They'll give you the context, the epic nature from the analysts. Journalists as well in their articles and interviews can help you with this sort of thing. You'll initially have the aesthetic, the visceral thrill of competition anyway. That will kind of keep you going initially. And over time, you'll start to model the game for yourself. You'll start to figure out, what does a player do that makes him win? What does someone do against him to win or to neutralize that or to shut him down? What is the difference between this player and this player? Oh, he's slightly better in this aspect. When I put them head to head, now this one wins. Or what is the upset potential? Why does this team that's not as good as another team upset them? What is it about the matchup? These things, as you start to learn them, will open the whole game up to you, and now it will become something you can enjoy even more so. I mean, if you do this, you will never be left, basically, without an interesting week in esports. I mean, I personally apply this philosophy to life in general. That's why I don't get ridiculously deep into any area unless it's something I think is really, really interesting. In general, I pick interesting topics and I take the most interesting aspects of it, and as a result, I keep my life interesting. I have a lot of variety, and there's always there's the novelty that comes from other things. I don't have to hope things go weird in this one thing that I'm following to enjoy them in that sense. So I think having this variety in your esports diet and your esports life will enhance a lot of people's enjoyment and allow them to have more than one game, so they're not just like, oh, I've gotten bored of this and this game's oversaturated and stuff. there's so much out there that we can enjoy, and universality beyond the specifics of the game that you might think you enjoy, that there are other aspects you will learn you actually enjoy. At least that's what I've come to the conclusion of.